Hi everyone, welcome to part 2. Okay, Caruana has just played knight b d7, challenging this knight here on e5. And Giri continued with knight c4, and this is his main idea in this knight e5 move, is to get the knight to c4, so it's attacking the queen and the dark squared bishop. So it's going to win the dark squared bishop and thus make this dark squared bishop on c1 a very powerful piece in the position, especially on the dark squares as far as black is concerned. So queen c7 is forced now, and now knight takes d6, and as I said, white can look forward to strong play on the dark squares for the rest of the game, and the bishop pair in an opening position, all looking good. So Caruana recaptured with queen takes d6, and Giri played rook d1, supporting this slightly weak pawn on d4. He doesn't want to play e3 or the bishop's badly restricted. And Caruana, for his part, needs to liberate his position. At the moment his pieces remain very passive, and white continues to enjoy a space advantage, and now the bishop pair as well. Caruana is still a pawn up, however, but white has good compensation with his space in the bishop pair, and Caruana liberated immediately with e5. You're not worried about d takes e5, because then queen takes e5 is okay. So Giri now got this passive knight back into the game with knight c3, and the idea is to play bishop a3 next, attacking the queen, and after the queen moves, winning the rook. So winning the exchange. Of course there's c5, but d takes c5. It gets very complicated anyway, but thankfully that didn't happen. So the problem with this is that it allows the d pawn to fall. Well, it's not really a problem, but it's something that black has allowed. E takes d4. The knight isn't going to be full because the queen would drop, and it will be supported after bishop a3, apparently winning the exchange. But because black has played e takes d4, he can now play c5. And it's important to note that the last few moves has greatly increased the scope for the light squared bishop here on g2 along the dark diagonal, and it's now controlling a lot more squares than it was beforehand and looking a lot more powerful. And this c5 move is forced really, unless black wants to give up the exchange. The only other option was queen e5, after which would come bishop takes f8, knight takes f8. If instead d takes c3, simply bishop b4, and white is doing well. So bishop takes f8, knight takes f8, now knight e4, and black definitely has compensation for the exchange. Objectively it's about equal, but it's difficult for black to willingly go down the exchange when white will have a lot of files to work down with his rooks in the resulting positions. Definitely going to favour white strategically. So c5 anyway is what the Caruana went for, and Giri continued with e3, and this is the best way, of course, for white to break down the black pawns here. And his knight obviously isn't going to fall because the d pawn is pinned, and black now has the problem of how to solve the tactical situation he's facing on the dark squares with his queen and rook lined up on the a3 to f8 diagonal. And this means that after a later e takes d4, there can be no c takes d4, because the way things stand, the queen will get chopped off. So Caruana elected to give back one of the two pawns he is now up with d3, allowing rook takes d3 with tempo, but that doesn't matter because he's going to move the queen on the next move anyway. And there's no way to defend the d4 pawn further, and black has to avoid these tactical problems, and this is helped if white is permitted to play e takes d4. It makes it even worse for black. So this explains Caruana's play of just giving the pawn back and allowing this tempo on his queen. And he continued with queen b8, which looks a little odd, but it's pretty much the only square that guarantees there'll be no further tactical problems or tempo gaining moves for white, and there's a few different ideas behind it that we'll see before long. So Giri continued with knight d5, with the idea of attacking the c pawn by clearing the c file. Now the bishop and the queen are attacking c5, and only the black knight is defending it. So white is threatening knight takes f6 and bishop takes c5, and in either instance he's either going to damage the pawn structure around the black king, or he's going to get initiative and open up the board for his bishop pair. So it's two decent choices as far as white's concerned. So it's all looking good. So knight takes d5 and rook takes d5. And here Caruana blundered under the pressure of losing his c pawn, and he played b6. And it's pretty hard to give up a 3-1 pawn majority when you have the hope that it could turn into something later in the game. But black needn't have worried about this. For one thing, white will have to give up his very powerful dark squared bishop in order to win the pawn, which he shouldn't really do if he wants to play for a strong attack. And black should content himself instead with something like rook e8 instead of this move, b6. Another drawback of this move is that it opens a long diagonal to the rook on a8, which is good as far as white's concerned, but as black who made this move b6. And it's probable that Caruana was intending to play bishop b7, and this kind of justifies the queen b8 move earlier, and the idea solidifying the queenside pawn majority and playing simply to trade off the light squared bishops later is easy to understand, but is flawed. And white gets an incredibly powerful position with simply bishop b2, and the bishop pair totally owning the board here, and there's already a lot of tactical problems for black to deal with. In actual fact, his position could rightly be described as losing already. The attacking power of the bishop on b2 now creates great attacking chances for white, and bishop b7 is impossible because the knight would be hanging. So Caruana played a5, but this only added to his problems. In fact, it's very hard to find a satisfactory defense at this point. For example, if he plays instead rook e8, then rook a1, intensifying the pressure on the knight is very strong. Black's best bet is rook e7. If instead knight f6, now rook d8 is going to win on the spot. This bishop being pinned is a major issue, and black again has no reasonable move here. If king f8, bishop takes f6 is winning. Black can't recapture. If g takes f6, queen takes h7, and mate to follow in 6 moves at maximum. So rook e7 would be best, but now bishop takes g7 is winning quickly. Black should play f6, but his position is just a total wreck at this stage, completely losing. If he plays instead king takes g7, now comes rook g5 check, king h8. If king f8, then queen takes h7 with an equally crushing attack. But now in this position comes queen c3 check, where best play continues rook e5. If instead queen e5, then rook takes d7. It's a very nice tactical shot, letting the queen go if black wants it, and an obviously winning attack. If queen takes c3, then rook d8 check is going to mate. So rook e5 is better, but now will come rook takes d7, which removes the defender of the rook, which is attacked by this rook and the queen. Only the queen is defending it now. So that after bishop takes d7 comes rook takes e5, and material is equal, but white's attack is totally crushing. There's a very painful discovered check coming next, not to mention black losing the exchange. Bishop on b2 here is still attacking the rook on a8, and it's an obviously winning position for white. If king g8, then rook g5 check, king f8, bishop takes a8 wins. There's no queen takes a8 or queen h8 check. It's going to pick up the queen on a8. So what other defenses could black try at this stage? Knight f6 is another one, and here it's correct for white to give up his powerful dark squared bishop for a different advantage. After g takes f6, rook h5 threatens mate on h7, forces f5, and now white can simply snap up the exchange, but much stronger is queen c3, threatening rook g5 check and a mating attack, again forcing f6, but now comes queen c4 check and king g7. If instead rook f7, then rook takes h7. It's totally winning. After king takes h7, queen takes f7 check. So it's obviously very bad. Once these lines are opened, you've got to look out for tactics. So queen c4 check, king g7, now queen h4 check, threatening to win h7, which black can't afford to allow to fall. So rook h8, and now simply rook d1, or indeed bishop takes a8, and white is easily winning. The damage that the dark squared bishop did has been decisive. Thus it seems that there was no satisfactory defense available to Caruana at this point. At least his a5 move did prepare to move his rook out of the line of sight of the bishop here on g2, and perhaps to help defend the second rank. So we'll go to what he did play, which was a5. Okay, that's the end of part 2.